Hello and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. We are recording this on Friday, August 2nd. The congressional investigation into the U.S. Secret Service's failures leading up to and during the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump at a July 13th campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, heated up this week as a bipartisan group of senators grilled Acting Director Ronald Rowe about the lack of accountability and answers weeks after a sniper's bullet grazed Trump's ear and killed a spectator. Joining me to discuss this is Casey Harper, the Center Square's Washington, D.C. bureau chief. Casey, where are we at with this investigation?
Yeah, I mean, this hearing that we had this week in the Senate with the new Ronald Rowe, the new acting head of the Secret Service, finally started to give us some of the details that Americans and lawmakers have been asking for. It's really the hearing that should have happened last week, when former Secret Service head Kimberly Cheatle appeared before Congress. Of course, we discussed this hearing. It was televised. It was a sort of became a viral moment. And if Cheatle had done last week what Rowe did this week, she might have been able to save her job, though it may have been a foregone conclusion that she would be pushed out. Because last week, when Cheatle was asked basic questions by lawmakers about what happened, what went wrong, very simple questions, she couldn't answer them. She said, "We're only 9 days into this investigation. We don't have, the FBI is looking into this. We can't give these answers just yet." And lawmakers became very upset and said, basically, why are you here? Like, how can you not give Congress basic answers to these questions, especially when you've been in the media giving more detailed answers, for example, in an interview with ABC News? And that hearing may have been 2 weeks ago. But anyway, Cheatle took a lot of fire and pretty much resigned shortly after that, despite previously the DHS secretary saying he backed her and was going to back her. But that hearing was the final nail in the coffin. And so we saw Cheatle go out. We saw Rowe come in, and he came before lawmakers this week. And there were still some fiery exchanges, a lot of heat, but he was much more ready to give some answers to hard questions. And there's a few things that stood out, Dan. First off, apparently the Secret Service did have a drone that they wanted to use the day of the Butler rally where Trump was nearly killed. But they were having connectivity, technical difficulties, basically, with the drone, and were not able to use it. And that drone likely, according to experts in Rowe, I believe, would have prevented the shooting, or very likely, because, the shooter was laying on a white rooftop, prone on a white rooftop. And so while it may have been a little bit difficult to see him from Trump's vantage point, not that difficult, an aerial shot would have clearly shown the outline of a human figure on a white rooftop, right? And we know from different media reports that the shooter had his own drone that he flew at the site just the day of the shooting, and so he was able to use that presumably to scout the area and look for firing lines and things like that. So that's a stand takeaway. And then before I hand it back to you, what I noticed was essentially that while he took much more responsibility than Cheatle, this Rowe did try to push things off on local law enforcement. And we've seen this kind of knife fighting in the media between local law enforcement and Secret Service, where Secret Service is trying to blame local law enforcement, and local law enforcement saying, "What are you talking about? You're the Secret Service. We're just following whatever orders you give us. You tell us where to stand." And that's where we stand. I mean, you guys are in charge of protecting the president, and we're just helping you. So you can't really, blame us. But he did try to push the blame. And one thing that was interesting is local law enforcement did not have a good way of communicating with the Secret Service. They were kind of siloed in their communications. And so even if they had maybe seen him, or they weren't able to communicate well. And so that was a big failure on the security, in the security apparatus. And pretty concerning. And hopefully, Dan, we assume they're going to fix these things going forward.
I'm going to take us just in a bit of a different direction for just a moment here. Casey, former President Trump this week also accused social media of essentially trying to downplay the assassination attempt. Specifically Google and Facebook, doing searches there for assassination attempt, hid some of the Trump stuff. You wrote about this week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, so we saw that, basically it started on X, formerly known as Twitter, where users were posting, videos of themselves or screenshots where they were trying to search Trump stories or Trump's assassination, and it wasn't popping up. Or even the photo on Facebook was being censored. And this was at first kind of like, just right-wing conspiracy or something, but it kept building up steam, and Facebook actually admitted that this was a mistake, that they were censoring this photo and they shouldn't have been doing it. Google kind of played it off more and said, this is just an anomaly, whatever, this happens to people. But it was interesting that Facebook admitted their mistake. And so a lot of people saying, well, Facebook just got caught, but they did admit it. And Trump, he pointed to this as just another example of the uphill battle he's fighting with social media companies being against him. With, of course, Google is very liberal. I mean, you can look and see donation data, for instance, and Google employees is one of the biggest donors to Democrats, right? And so there's no secret that it's a very liberal company, and there might be some anti-Trump motives within that company to do things against him. And of course, the traditional news media is all in for Harris right now. So Trump is pointing out this all in battle that he's fighting, an uphill battle against all these digital locusts of power, basically.
All right, let's swing it back to the investigation. As you mentioned, former Director Kimberly Cheatle was forced out. She resigned a little over a week ago. Acting Director Ronald Rowe was grilled before Congress. There are plenty of Republicans in Congress saying U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, whose department oversees the Secret Service, should also resign. Do you expect any more fallout from this, Casey? What's next?
I think we could see some fallout from other Secret Service officials. I've seen some things online where people within the Secret Service are very upset with how this is handled, how they're being stifled. You could have some whistleblowers come forward. I think there would be a big appetite for a Secret Service whistleblower to come forward. What does this counter sniper think? We still haven't heard, that would be a pretty incredible interview, a pretty incredible testimony before Congress. And if that counter sniper were able to point some fingers, I mean, it could put pressure on other people. I don't think Mayorkas is going anywhere until the end of this presidential term. The Republicans have been trying to impeach him, get rid of him for months and months, unsuccessfully. He only has a few more months in Biden's term. I think he's going to ride it out and transition to some other job, possibly in lobbying or something else. I'd be surprised if Harris would keep him on if she wins the White House, and Trump, of course, would not keep him on. So his days are numbered, but not because of this Secret Service investigation, in my opinion. Though I think lower level Secret Service officials could still be forced out if more whistleblowers do come forward.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Casey. Mayorkas, in fact, was impeached by the U.S. House, the Republican-controlled House, but never stood trial in the Democrat-controlled Senate. So I do agree with you that he'll be safe. Thank you for joining us today, Casey. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.